welcome to Emily Kate Made This. I am Emily Kate and I'm coming to you from Berlin in Germany. So welcome to my knitting and sewing podcast. Today is all knitting, I believe. So hello to anybody new and welcome back to returning viewers. Almost 1,000 subscribers, so that's exciting. And where can you find me? You can find me on Ravelry, Instagram and Coffee as Emily Kate Made This. And any other admin-y introduction things? No, I think we're good. So let us begin. I shall begin with what I am wearing. This is a knitted item that I'm constantly thinking I should frog this. And then I look at it and think, it took so long. No, I'm not frogging it. Then I wear it and think, I should frog this. It is the Primavera top by the Knit Stitch. I'll try and insert a picture here. Oh, by the way, new setup. I just moved my whole room around, so I'm trying to find where's a good place to sit. Anyway, back to the knitting. I'll try and insert a picture of the Knit Stitch top that I made. And then after I went through the leaf series that she has, I moved on to this one. The light isn't very good today, but hopefully you'll see. It is this purple one. And the stitch is really beautiful. And yet it came out enormous. I've made about 5 or 6 patterns from the Knit Stitch, and they were the first knitting patterns I ever did. So I bought the We Are Knitters cotton and 5mm needles, and I just followed exactly what she said. I didn't know about gauge, I didn't know anything then. I just thought knitting pattern, yarn, needles, done, knitted them. Then, yeah, when I made this one, I realised this is enormous, and I'm a bit confused because every other item I made from her fit, using the same yarn, same needles, but hey ho. I have since, well, I've technically learnt about gauge. I'm just terrible at getting gauge, but that's not the point. This is enormous, and as you can see, I'm wearing what I showed you last time. My last finished object was this My Little Secret Crop by Jessie Maed. I have put that underneath because if I didn't, you'd see all the goods. But I can't bring myself to undo it. So I'm hoping this is a way that I can actually start wearing it more regularly. It's also really long. I tend to wear things that stop at my waist, and this one comes like past my hips. So it's like stretched out, and yeah. I am contemplating knitting it again with a different yarn. I also have a jumper pattern of this, so maybe I'll do that one first. Maybe I'll turn it into a t-shirt, a jumper, we shall see. But yeah, that's what I'm wearing. I am wearing some hand sewn shorts as well. I talked about them in my first ever episode, I believe. I can't remember what they're called. I think they're boxer shorts by Melly Sews, but if you are curious at all, it's episode number 1. So that is what I'm wearing. Yeah, We Are Knitters cotton and Jessie Maed designs. If you want to know more about this one, this was my finished object from last episode. Okay, now that I have a new setup, I have nowhere to place any cups or drinks or projects, so I bought a chair and hopefully this will work. Usually I'm just climbing around on the floor, but let's see. This episode, and probably for the coming future, if my mojo for vintage knitting continues, I am rabbit hole deep in vintage knitting dreams and desires. So I've got 2 vintage knits on the go, a bazillion planned, and they take a really long time. So there's no finished objects for this episode. I'm hoping the next episode, one of them will be finished, but yeah, the rest, that's gonna be a while till I get a finished object. Let us start with number 1. Don't think I showed you this, but possibly I did. Yes, I did, because This is a vintage knit that I was given by my mum. She was given it by someone who died. Well, yeah, doesn't really matter. Sorry, the window's open. If you hear noises, apologies. This came from a vintage magazine pamphlet thing called, Robin is the company, 1174. Don't think it's available anywhere. It came out of the, like, under the stairs cupboard of my friend's mum who died. And I got a bunch of knitting patterns from her, some from the 50s up until about the 70s. I'm not 100% sure of the era of this. I'm going with either 60s or 70s because it's in old money. I can't remember the price, 7D or something. That was before pounds, and we got pounds in the UK in the 70s, so it's possibly around the 60s or 70s. Vintage knits always look really weird when they are not blocked and when they're lace, but this is it. And yes, it is quite large. It's knitted as two pieces, but they don't have sleeves. The sleeves are kind of knitted on as you go. And it's come out bigger than the other ones. This is, if you haven't seen my other episodes, I've done 2 other vintage tops of very, very similar ilk, but they were from a 1940s, I think, pattern, all in black and white, and this one has come out a lot bigger. So the idea is this will be at the waist and it grows into sleeves that will start around here, and then eventually I'll have 2 and they will join at the top, but it is looking really big, so I'm not sure, and it's not even blocked yet. It looks like so. Yeah, now I'm looking at it on the camera, I'm mildly panicked. It looks huge. Maybe I should stop already. I need to do a moss stitch border at the top, and that will then turn into, like, it'll match this bit here and come across, and then you sew them together at the shoulders. Yeah, I'm getting a bit nervous now, seeing how big this is. Okay, let's see how that goes. I couldn't continue because I ran out of yarn, which hilariously enough, I started this project to use up my yarn, but it came out a lot bigger, by about 4 inches bigger than I expected, and then I ran out of yarn. I was expecting to buy 1 more ball, and I had to buy 3. It's, again, you've seen it a bazillion times by now, Onion Knits No.4 in the colour 808. It's an organic wool and nettle blend. And I always try to show you up close and it never focuses, but you know, I'll just keep trying. So this colour I love. I think it looks really nice with my skin tone, but I'm not sure if this is going to come out right. Oh my gosh, I'm panicking. Yeah, we shall see what happens. It takes a lot longer than you'd think. Well, I'm not a fast knitter anyway, but I always think, oh, it's like DK, it'll fly off my needles, but it really doesn't. So that is vintage pattern number 1. And I will throw that on the floor like I usually do. Oh, and I'm also using my new needles. Don't know if I mentioned them last time, but when I was in the UK I picked up some higher bamboo needles because I didn't have any sock needles and it was an emergency. I needed needles for the flight and when I went to the wedding in the UK. So I picked up some of those and I really liked them. So when I came back I ordered a set of the higher bamboo 5-inch needles. They're not as amazing as the other ones because I'm finding that they're snagging when I go from the wire to the needle. I'm getting a bit caught, and I don't have that with my Chiaogus. But the problem is I really like the Lilac needles, but they don't start until about it's either 3.5 or 3.25 as interchangeable. And every needle that I need is about 1.5 to 3. So that was annoying. So I got the interchangeable set, and I do like them, but yeah, they're snagging a little bit. But I will keep on going and see how I feel. I also have about 4 projects that need 3mm needles, and that needle set did not come with 3. It came with, I think, 2, 2.25, 2.5, skipped 3, 3.25, 3.5, and I think it goes up to 5. So it's a mini set. Why? Same as Chiaogu, they don't have 3mm. Why? Why not? So I need to buy them because I've lost one singular needle from my Chiaogu set. I've never lost any of my knitting related items, not even a stitch marker. So I've no idea how or where I have lost my 3mm needle, but I'm gonna have to buy more, which makes me sad because they're really expensive, and I'm very annoyed at myself because about, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe even a year ago, I thought I should buy a whole bunch of extras just in case, and thought, but they're €8.50. No, now they're €11.50, so really should have done that. Anyway, moving on to my next vintage knit. I'm very excited about this one. If any of you have watched, I think it was on BBC, the Home Fires. It was a TV series about the World War II, like some women living in it, and I'm terrible at explaining things. Google it, it's very interesting. It's just World War II and women in the Women's Institute, I think. Basically, there's some amazing knitwear in that TV show. And I have the books now because they only did 2, I think, was it 3 seasons? And then they stopped filming it or stopped producing it, so I've got the books, but you can't see the knitwear in the books. So I encourage you to watch it. So I also watched Retro Claude, who I adore. She has some beautiful knitwear, she has nice knitwear patterns, a couple that she's made, and she just talks about some really beautiful vintage clothing, sewing, knitting. Yeah, go check her out as well. But she mentioned this pattern and I already had purchased it, but I wasn't brave enough to cast it on. And then, in a whirlwind of madness, I decided to cast it on. I'll try and insert a picture. I just hit my funny bone. Ow. I will try and insert a picture, but it's kind of difficult. Maybe I can get a picture from Home Fires and stick that there. It's a beautiful 1940s short sleeve chevron jumper with panels of different colours, and I have noticed that I already knew that the wool in World War II era, 1940s, they had 3-ply mainly, and that is a very different weight of yarn to what we have nowadays. And it's not lace and it's not fingering, and yet they use about 3.75, 3.5mm needles, but they get smaller gauge, and I don't understand how this happens. I did a gauge swatch and I could not for the life of me get gauge. I used fingering weight, no, I used light, I used where are you? I've hidden everything. I will try and insert some kind of numbering thing. It's basically less than fingering weight yarn, and I used smaller needles and I couldn't get gauge. I needed something, yeah, do you know what it is? It's something really weird. You need to do 16 stitches in 1 inch and 7/8. That's just frustrating. Not 2 inches, 1 inch, 7/8. 16 stitches, and I was getting 12, and I just couldn't get smaller because I had really open loose fabric. I had, even when I went down in the yarn, my needles were just getting so small. I was never going to be able to make a jumper on like 1mm needles. So I bumped up the yarn to the oldest yarn I think I have in my stash, which is Drops Nord. It's a sport weight, but I used a lot thinner needles to try and get gauge. Still didn't get gauge. Then I thought, well, it's a 35-inch bust, and it's 36 inches when you read the pattern, but it says it's for 35 inches. I don't know, maybe it stretches to that. So I thought, oh genius, it doesn't matter, I'll just take out a section because I'm already going to make it too big because my gauge is wrong and it's too big anyway, so I'll just take out 2 sections. Now I'm knitting it, it's a lot smaller than that, so I'm slightly panicked. Shall I show it to you and stop just waffling on? Admittedly, it's not usually the colour palette I would choose, but I have them all and I wanted to use them, and they are nice. So here's the nice yarn, it's all fluffy, it's an alpaca, I should tell you that. Alpaca, polyamide and wool blend, and it looks like this. So I've done a provisional cast on because I need to do about 4 or 5 inches of ribbing, 1 by 1 ribbing, and according to the pattern I would need it on, I think it's all in UK needles. I should be using 3mm needles for the rib and 3.75 for the pattern, but I was getting ridiculous fabric when I tried that. So this one I'm getting, I think, 12 stitches instead of 16, but it is quite nice. It's quite nice fabric, and I took out 2 of these repeat things, and yeah, I have to use 2.75mm needles and sport weight yarn to get this fabric. Instead of 3.75, I'm using 2.75 for this. So the ribbing, I'm going to need to use 2mm needles. And I could not bring myself to do 5 inches of 1 by 1 ribbing on 2mm needles and then find out that this didn't fit. So I've done a provisional cast on, going to finish the body of the first panel, block it and see if it fits, because at the moment it looks quite small. I've just started for the armpit and I'm already nervous because it doesn't tell you the gauge you need lengthwise, it just tells you you need 16 stitches in 1 inch, 0.75, 75, there, 1 7/8 of an inch. So I don't know how high, so I don't know if my gauge is off for the armpits. I'm slightly nervous, but alas, it should be about here. And then go around here. So I think it's gonna fit, but it's going to be like a negative ease jumper. I think it is on the pattern. The pattern pictures look like it's basically negative ease or no ease. So I've got another few rows of this chevron, then I have a big panel of moss stitch. Then I haven't looked into what happens. I don't know about the collar. So I will wash this and block it, see if it stretches. Then I can do the ribbing on the bottom and the second one of these and pray that I have done the decreases for the armholes correctly, because I believe it's called a set-in sleeve, I think, where you sew your sleeve. I haven't even checked if the sleeve, I'm assuming the sleeve is flat and it's kind of got like a poofiness to it. I will get to that adventure when I come to it. But for now, this is my vintage knit number 2. I'm really excited for it, and I'm also really scared. I really want it to work. I have so many more patterns that I've purchased or that I was given by my mum, and I need this to be a success story. I have no idea how you know when a sleeve is going well and when you know if it's the right depth, etc, etc. So I suppose there's one way to find out. I think that's all I'm going to talk about for now, because I'll just tell you more later. But I'm excited at the moment. I got the pattern. A lot of you have asked where I got the vintage patterns from, and I'm disappointing all of you because they were given to me by my mum, as I've said, and they're not available for print. Some people have them on Ravelry as, like, they did the project, but you can't buy the pattern. This one you can buy. So this one is on a website on Etsy called Wool Time Fun. Wool Time Fun. She has loads of vintage patterns, so if you are looking for any, you will find them there. Highly encourage you to go and find some. Right, I will go put this on my bed so I do not stand on the needles. Okay, and my next project, I'm a bit of a broken record here. I decided last year, I think, who knows anymore, time, I wanted to knit my mum a fox sweater called Into the Wild by Tanya Barley, and I cast it on just assuming all would go well. I do believe I did a test, like I did a swatch because I'd done it. This Plutolopi, I had used Plutolopi before and all was well, and I hadn't had a problem. And then I did this pattern and it was single strand, and in my mind I thought single strand Plutolopi is like fingering weight, but according to the pattern and according to testers it was going to give me 17 stitches in 10 centimeters, and it did not. If you have been watching this podcast for a while, you will know that I had a fail of a time with this jumper, and I started with size 4 and I ended up with a yoke that was size 1, which worked for me in that I got to wear it and keep it, but it was supposed to be for my mother. So I stupidly continued knitting as a size 4, but when held like single, not doing colour work, I then ended up with a huge jumper, and I just made it short, didn't do sleeves, and decided I'll do that another time. Fast forward, I got some more yarn that was not unspun, was not Plutolopi. Even though I love my Plutolopi, I was not doing that again. And I purchased Ull Centrum 3-ply. It's a Swedish yarn, it is beautiful. I have 3 actually. But there's some green, please focus, I'm not on my face. Maybe I can insert video later, but they're all attached to my knitting, so that one's not. That's the main colour that I have decided for the jumper. Then it has some like charcoal, orangey for the fox, and cream for the background. I did a test swatch. I didn't used to swatch. I then decided I should start doing that because all my colourwork projects keep going, yeah, fill in swear words. I did my test swatch and I did it in the round, and I blocked it, I counted it, I had 18 stitches instead of 17, so I thought, I recalculated and then discovered I was going to be about 3 or 4 inches off the bust. So instead of doing size 4, I went up to size 5 in the pattern. Then I started knitting and I did 4 millimeters, and then for the colour work I went up to 5. I think it's recommended as 4 in the pattern. And I counted the stitches and I was getting 5 stitches when I need 4 something. 4. I don't know. I can't do maths. I needed less. And this is where I'm at. But I got 9 rows in and calculated on 5mm I was getting 5 stitches in 1 inch. And I counted it in several places. Then I used the measuring tape and did 2 inches and counted, and I got 10 stitches, so it wasn't just a blip. So then I ripped it out, put in this safety line and used 6mm, and I'm still getting 5 stitches or 10 stitches in 2 inches. And I don't understand. I don't know how this works. How can I possibly have 4, 4.5, 5 and 6mm all giving me the same gauge? I don't know. So I am a bit confused because I don't want to go up anymore, because I don't want the row gauge to go mental. But my mum has a 42-inch bust, and this was supposed to be the 45-inch bust, but now I'm doing the pattern for a 48-inch with the stitch count that would end up giving me the 45-inch because I was off gauge by 1 stitch. But if I go up to the next size, it's like 52 inches to get a 42, and this is just going over my head. I can't even explain it to you, that's how confused I'm getting. So I think I'm just going to keep going on 6mm and hope that it stretches. And when I blocked it, my gauge didn't change at all. I had 18 stitches in 10 centimeters, then I blocked it, I still had 18, and the row gauge stayed the same as well. So I don't think this will change, but maybe if I block it and I can like pull at the colour work somehow. Because basically at the moment, according to calculations, it will come out at about 40 inches. So that's not going to fit. But my backup plan, if this does not come out at the right size once I've done the yoke, it will then be my husband's, because he has a 40-inch chest, and I'll just pray that he doesn't mind it tighter on the yoke. And if that totally fails, then it either becomes my second failed sweater, or I don't know, I cut out the yoke and turn it into something. But I can't rip this out again, because if I rip it out, I still don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I'm going to go to size 6, then run out of yarn, or if I'm just, the gauge is going to magically change. I don't know, but this is it. This is going to happen. I'm going to pray that this stretches and gets to 45 inches so it goes around her bust. Basically all I'm going to say about it, because I'm sure if any of you watch Instagram, you're fed up with me complaining and being confused, and I'm sure my next episode I will be doing the same thing. So that is potentially my Into the Wild sweater. I will continue working on that later, probably today. I was humming and hawing and I couldn't decide, but I've now decided I'm just gonna knit it. Just gonna knit it, because it can't possibly be the same gauge. It's 6mm needles instead of 4. It just, and I gauge swatched on 4. Calm thoughts. Ooh. So, my next project is not a whip, but it is a whip. I did mention it before. I finished a while ago my Maja cardigan. Then I put it on and it felt a bit weird, like it didn't sit quite right, but I ignored that. Then I gave it to my mum to try on when she visited, and it looked spectacular on her. But the sleeves this was my first ever colourwork project that wasn't a pair of socks. I've done about, I don't know, how many have I done? 5 pairs of colourwork socks, and this was the first garment. And the sleeves are what I started with, and I pulled, when I did magic loop, I pulled at the colourwork and it made it really tight. And now it's beautiful because my mum is bigger than me, and anyone's arms are going to be bigger than my tiddly little things. But it didn't help that this was really tight, so even I struggled to get it on. And she said she would take it off my hands, but I'd need to change the sleeves. So I ripped out, as you can see from this side, I ripped out the sleeves, and I decided to just follow the pattern and do them bottom up and then graft them together. Not sure if that was a good idea. I was told that the colour work would change if you do it one way, like if you do a top-down sweater and then did arms from bottom up, somehow the V changes. So I figured I'd just follow the pattern, and I wanted to learn how to attach two pieces of fabric together. So I unravelled it all, had noodle spaghetti let low P. I increased from the small to the large arm. So I cast on a different number of stitches, did my colour work again, and what's interesting, what I find interesting, is this is the same yarn. I didn't buy new yarn. I ripped it out and redid it and added more of the blue yarn that I had used already in this whole sweater. So it wasn't a new dye lot or anything. You won't be able to tell, I know you won't. But the blue that joins here is a different shade of blue to the rest of the jumper. And I find that bizarre. Like, I don't really care, but it is interesting. I learned how to graft these together. Didn't do a fantastic job probably because I didn't know what I was doing at the beginning, and I had help from a lovely woman on Instagram showing me how to do it, because I just couldn't get my head around what I was doing. It's basically like with socks, but a Kitchener stitch, but I just couldn't understand how to get all these two and then another set of needles all to work together. But it was actually easy enough. Problem was that my let low P had turned into Pluto low P after being unravelled and then spit spliced together. And I was basically trying to sew with Pluto low P, or like Newton yarn, and it was just falling apart. And every time I'd gently pull to get the yarn to come through the Kitchener, it fell apart. So I've got some dodgy sections on here, like massive, awful section here. But then the rest of it's alright. And I hope it fits her, because it took forever to unravel this. I'm not quite sure. When people frog, they make it look really easy. They just like unrip and it all just unravels. But I think however I was catching floats just basically knotted all of my yarn, and I had about 4 hours just to unravel this. Yeah. And then a couple of days just to redo this. And then another day to get my head around this. So now I am desperately trying for the second sleeve, but it's been so hot. Even now, the humidity in this room is 64%, and it's 26 degrees in here. It's been 33 degrees, 35, 36, and I can't physically knit with let low P. I've been knitting with the other yarns, it's been alright, but let low P just sticks, and every time I try to catch the yarn, it won't move through my fingers. It's just, yeah, that's a term. So this is on hold at the moment until it cools down. Then I will continue. It probably doesn't help that the yarn is like wibbly wobbly noodles, but it will happen. Then I'm going to buy some ribbon and try and hide the state of my steeking, because I don't really mind it, but when you gift it to someone else, suddenly you see things you didn't really see before. So that is technically my other whip. I can't really remember what I had as whips on my last episode, but I know I had one that was using a silk yarn, and I haven't touched that because it was really hurting my hands, and I wanted to save my hand energy for these projects. And my Felix, I'm still like, I'm still humming and hawing. I have a Felix cardigan and I don't love it. I really want to love it, and it took me ages to understand I don't know why I struggle so much with the eyelets, but both, I think I've made the Felix 3 times and the eyelets just get me every time. I just don't get it. So it took me ages to get them. So I really don't want to unravel it just for the amount of time it took. It's also a very sticky yarn, so it's not easy. It doesn't like flow through my hands like other yarns, so it takes a lot more effort. And I know that the gauge is quite loose and open, but I'm not loving the look of it. And I know that the yarn, which is a Retrosaria Poma Viora, is a single ply yarn. And I'm really aware that single ply doesn't last that, it isn't as hard wearing. And if it's single ply and it's a loose fabric, I just have horror thoughts of just holes appearing. But I haven't blocked it. So I am considering blocking it to see what it would look like should I finish it and block it, if it'll fill in all the gaps, or if it won't. So I haven't picked it up. And my other work in progress that I mentioned, I haven't started either. That was my plant lady, because I had to rip it out and get new yarn. But then I went to the UK and I've come back and I've got all these other projects, so I haven't actually cast that one on yet. So at the moment, those whips are in timeout. They're all behind me. They are in timeout until I'm ready. Which, at the moment, I'm actually laughing at myself every day now, because I made that Ziggy shawl, if you recall, and I think that was my last episode I showed you. And I realised I did not like knitting for other people. And I wanted to, but I didn't. And I have now got 2 jumpers and a shawl planned for other people. So I haven't really got any time for my own if I am to get those done for Christmas. But I'm going to be knitting my own things because I want to knit my vintage tops. And a jumper on 2.75mm needles is going to take forever. And then I've got a jumper for my mum and a jumper for my husband and a shawl for my mum. So I'm not sure when the plant lady will be recast on. What else? Also, last time I told you about a chicken jumper. I got some yarn. Can you see it? Down there. I showed you this beautiful yarn that I got in Brighton in Yak in my last episode, and I had dreams of using it for this chicken jumper, and I talked about it and said how marvellous it was, and then I did not show you a picture and I did not link it, so you had no idea what I was talking about. So the jumper is hopefully here. It is called, it's got a very weird name, Hillary Fluff and the Magic Fungi. It has chickens and mushrooms. Be still, my beating heart. So after talking about it and having this yarn, I thought I need to do this. I don't know how, when, or what I'm doing, but basically I love this cardigan and I want to make it, and I'm scared to make it because, as you can see, my gauge is mental and I'm always too loose or too tight, and I can't quite get my head around how I can be both. And yet I want to cast on an all over colourwork cardigan that has 28 stitches per 10 centimetres. So it's very thin, but if it like falls in line with my usual colourwork, I should be able to knit it. And it'll come out too small, so if it's like a fingering weight, it'll come out like 28 stitches. Yeah, we'll see. Because the other thing I wanted to mention with the fox sweater is I'm getting a crazy tight tension, but I knit with my left hand. I think it's called Norwegian style, because I don't have my finger in the air, but right next to the needle. and I just pick from there. And when I do 2 colours, I knit exactly the same. I have the 2 in my hand, but I'm not holding any tension. I'm not wrapping them around fingers, they're just laying there. So I'm not pulling them. I'm not knitting with one hand and the other to confuse tension. So I have absolutely no idea how the tension can be so tight. But alas, we shall see what happens with a fingering or lace, kind of almost light fingering maybe, light fingering weight jumper. I want to turn it into a jumper, but I'm a little bit unsure as to how, because you need to then calculate when you take out the sticking stitches and the button band what the difference will be. And I don't want to get the wrong size. Also, according to the pattern, it says that you'll have to not cut off your arms, what? Join, separate for the sleeves at a different time. I don't know why, and I don't know how. I don't know how I'm supposed to know how. So it could end up being a cardigan, just for the sake that I don't know how to make it a jumper. I will do a swatch, but at the moment I've done a swatch for the Chevron cardigan. I did that flat, and I can't remember exactly, but let's say I got 11 stitches. But when I did the actual jumper, I got 12 stitches in it. That gauge was off by 1 stitch, which makes a huge difference. Did the same for this one, where I was off, and then now I'm off by like 4 stitches, even though when I did the swatch in the round, I was 1 stitch off. And I've got another top, like every time I do a swatch, I either do it flat or I do it in the round, and I do a yay big, and then I block it, and it's always completely different to the actual item that I knit. So I want to do a swatch for the chicken jumper, and I thought I could do a small one and then turn it into like a not placemat, but maybe like a mug mat, so I didn't waste the yarn, because it's going to take me ages. It's going to basically be like doing a colourwork sock, like the whole top part of a sock. So it's going to take me ages. I'm not going to unravel that. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to tell me the truth or not, if it will actually be the correct gauge. So yeah, I don't know, but I bought some yarn for it. So this is kind of like we're going into acquisitions now, because I think I've talked about everything. I'm not really one for talking about acquisitions, but I talked about this cardigan the last time, so it kind of makes sense to show you that I'm not going to just start this cardigan with 1 skein of yarn I showed you. I got a couple more, but let me check. I've talked about this. Yeah, I've talked about everything else, so yeah, a little bit of acquisitions and future plans, and then I'm off to eat. I won't show you everything because I've organised it, but I got some yarn for the chicken sweater. So everyone has run out of cream or oat colour here, so I got one from Spindrift. I have no idea exactly how much yarn I need, because I haven't decided if I'm going to make it colourwork top, colourwork bottom, wedge of the colour I showed you last time, the yellow colour, or if I would do all over. Haven't made up my mind, so I just bought a bunch of random ones that fit the colour key. I looked through Ravelry for what other people had used, and yeah, I just kind of guesstimated. So I've got, this is my chicken colour, and it comes from, if you're in the European Union, Trollenwolle. It is Dutch, I believe. Please focus. They have this beautiful Shetland yarn. I've never used it, but I'm assuming it's beautiful. It looks beautiful and smells like a sheep. It's so strong. It's 50 grams, 190 meters, and recommended needles are 3.25. So yeah, we'll see. See how my gauge works. that's the colour I'm going to use for my chickens. Whoops! It's my cedar balls falling on the floor. I will pick that up because I don't want to fall over that. Oh, it'd probably be easier if I just took my camera over here, but hey ho. This is going to be one of my background colours. Same company. And I got this one. And there's a grey. A grey and a yellow. Not sure how interesting it is just to see a bunch of yarn bums, but there we go. And I also have 2 other wools. My mum wanted me to make her a Humblebee shawl, and after spending an outrageous amount for her Into the Wilds jumper, I felt a bit mean, but I spent a lot less on this yarn. This is Drops, so it's Drops Soft Tweed. And what colour are you? It's a super fine alpaca and merino wool blend, colour 2. She said she wanted like a porridge oatmeal-y coloured one. So this, as I said to you, is going to be very much like copy paste from the last few months, because there's my Maja doing another Into the Wild jumper, another Humblebee shawl, but hopefully with less pain, more success. So it's very nice, it feels really nice. So I'm thinking I might cast this on today, possibly, or tomorrow, because I'm going to Venice, I'm going to Italy next month. It's not my first choice of where I would go in Italy, but it's like my husband's parents' wedding anniversary, so we're going to celebrate, and they stay there in a, like, not a caravan park, but like a holiday home area. Also not something I've ever done particularly, so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, I'm planning my knitting, and I thought once I've passed the bees, it's smooth sailing, because you have a row of bees and then it starts getting smaller. So sitting on the airplane or on the trains, I should just be able to go backwards and forwards and not have to really think so much, except the decreases. Must remember the decreases. That is for my Humblebee shawl. And the problem will be, also the reason I'm making the Humblebee is because if the Into the Wild sweater doesn't work and doesn't fit my mum, she won't have a present for Christmas. So then she's going to get the Humblebee shawl as a backup, and if it does work, then bonus, she's got 2 beautiful presents. If it doesn't work, the jumper will potentially be my husband's, which then throws another problem into the works, because I have some yarn to make him a jumper, and then he could end up with 2 jumpers and my mum none. So we'll see what happens. But the yarn just arrived today. This is Navia yarns. It's a mixture of I can't pronounce that, Faroese wool, Shetland wool and Australian lamb's wool. There's some very loud neighbours. Maybe I should shut the window. Didn't even realise I had the window open that entire time, so I really hope that the sound has not been completely horrendous, because I've been talking for ages and to redo that would be horrible. So I'll quickly speak about this, then we'll go. I'm going to make him the flax sweater with this green, and I have intentions to add some colour work around the bottom, but I will get to that when I'm near there, because I don't want to spoil the surprise. but I think it'd be really cute. I mean, manly, very manly. But I've guesstimated how much I'll need for the background, the colour work. Hopefully I have enough. This will be his colours. So, I've noticed how incredibly quiet it is now in here. I really should have shut that window, I'm sorry. That is everything. I am done talking about all the things. So thank you very much for watching. If you liked it, please press the like, and if you want to watch any more, you know what to do. Press that subscribe and all that jazz. So thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye!